Good evening. My name is Rhonda Hill. I am the Director of Race and Faith, and I'm so glad to have this conversation tonight and be joined by two wonderful women who will each introduce themselves shortly. But we're having a conversation tonight about intersectionality, about what it means to be a good ally, all in relationship to the event Something to Say, which is an intergenerational learning experience. I'm inviting families to have conversations about racism. And this year, we decided to widen the conversation and talk about anti-Semitism. And so when we talk about anti-Semitism, usually the faces that we see don't look like my guests necessarily. I know for me, I totally was ignorant to this. I always imagined European features, dark hair, curly hair, as those were the only Jewish people. It wasn't until about, I would say, late 90s, early 2000s, here in Milwaukee at the Black Holocaust Museum. They had a seminar on Egyptian, oh no, not Egyptian Jews.
Ethiopian?
Yes, Ethiopian Jews. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And that just like, I was sitting there like, oh wow, I never knew. And so I think tonight that might be, and what I'm hoping is for a lot of other people, that as we have this conversation with two Jewish women of color here tonight, that how you see or how you experience or who you think can be Jewish will be broadened and expanded as mine was. I had some other eye-opening moments too that we could just say for later that really helped me to grow and expand and open up my eyes and understanding. And so tonight, as we prepare and encourage families to engage and have conversation around racism and anti-Semitism, to learn more, to grow more, I really hope that this conversation helps and adds to that learning that families will continue to participate in, not only hopefully this January King holiday, but beyond this time. And so I would like to invite my guests to share your names and your organizations and why on earth did you agree to talk to me. So you all know, we've never ever met in person. This is our first time meeting and being able to exchange. And they said, yes, we'll do this with you, Rhonda. So please share why did you decide to speak and join me for this conversation tonight? Whoever wants to start, you can start.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea, and I am also from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I think, being in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I always like to say small walkie. And when I heard about Rhonda through some other faith leaders, community leaders here in the city, those are people that I look up to. Those are people I trust, and I value their opinion and their thought leadership. And when they referred me to Rhonda, I thought, here is a woman of color in this city who's willing to learn, who wants to learn, and who wants to also share this education with other people. And as a former educator myself, I strongly support what you're doing, Rhonda. I think it's admirable, and that's why I decided to participate.
Thank you. And I'm glad you did too. Okay, Ramona. Oh, did you want to say organization or anything like that you're connected to?
Yeah, I do. In the Jewish community, I sit on the board of Tikkun Ha'ir, which is Hebrew for repair the city. And we focus on doing things to improve the city of Milwaukee. We specifically focus on this city. We have various social justice issues. We ensure that people here are politically engaged. We ensure that people receive healthy food. We do drives for people across the city. and a lot of engagement similar to what you're doing, interfaith type of work. I also am part of ADOT along with Ramona. This is the Midwest Racial Jewish Diversity Collaborative, and we focus, I might have butchered some of those words right there, but we focus on Jews of color in the Midwest area, along with our founder, Shahana McKinney. And then lastly, I am a Weinstein Fellow through the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. That means that I was chosen after applying to be part of a program that shapes Jewish leaders of Milwaukee. And then I also participated in a nonprofit training with Ramona to ensure that as a board leader, which are oftentimes older Ashkenazi descendant type looking as well, whatever your stereotypes you want to apply to that, men. And this program was ensuring that as if I became a board member, that I would have the right tools.
Right on. I'm glad that I had you circle back and share that information. Ramona?
Hi, thank you. I'm Ramona Tenorio, born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I grew up on the South Side. Let's see, I'm here representing, I guess, a couple different organizations. I am part of a TUVE initiative, which is a hub for Jews of color-led culture responsive evaluation of Jewish community racial justice programs. And I'm a co-founder and co-director along with Shahana McKinney Belden on that project. I serve as a board member of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation's Community Relations Council, as well as my own synagogue's board of trustees, which is a Reformed congregation here in Wisconsin, just a suburb of Milwaukee. I'm also on the board of Jutina Eco, which is focuses on Latinx Jews nationally and internationally, and provides an amazing space for us to be able to step into a space where we can be fully ourselves, linguistically, culturally, and all the intersections that we represent. And I also had the pleasure of being Union for Reform Judaism Juvie Nation Fellow in 2021 and 22, which is an effort on racial diversity, equity, inclusion work that they're doing. And I'm so excited that you invited us to be here, Rhonda, and to engage in this conversation, because I feel that showing who we are and how diverse the Jewish community really is so important for, for the whole community, but also especially for Jews of color, who sometimes we can feel marginalized and just kind of ignored and not known that we exist. And so it's a really great opportunity to be able to share who we are and share the diversity of our community.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to learning more, and looking forward to people's feedback as they watch this video and get to see what they've learned as well, because I do think that part of just exposure is important to help us redefine who we thought we knew, what we thought was true. So I want to really anchor this in conversation that's central to something to say, which is our families, how families can help us to better understand ourselves, how families can help us navigate the world, knowing that we learn our family unit is really our first set of teachers. And so we like to, one thing I really like to ask people is really like, how did your family help you grow into who you are today? Or how did your family help you to navigate the realities of if I could say maybe being a dual minority, if you will, is if I just think of one being already a woman of color, you already feel, I know I do feel in some ways like it's a battle, and that piece of, like you said, Ramona, feeling invisible. But then when you add, another marginalized community onto it, and that's that intersectionality, where you find like, okay, here's some more things I need to explain about myself, or this, that, and the other, to help myself feel accepted or belong to a part of the world. How did your families help you to navigate that, or how do you talk about these realities within your family, or do you do that at all?
Yeah, I would say that's a good question, Rhonda. I don't think I've ever actually gotten that question as a panelist, because I think for some of us, I think it's really hard sometimes for people to imagine that this religion is more than that. For a lot of Jews, it's a culture, it's ethnicity, it's a place in the world. So for some of us, because we have these dual minorities, these dual identities, that means it's highly likely, especially in this time period in 2022, that we're coming from two families that had very different identities. And that's my story. So on one hand, one half of my family completely ignores the fact that I'm a Jew and almost doesn't even acknowledge it. And then the other side of my family, I'm not going to say which parent, is very embracing of it. And so I feel like I was luckily surrounded more often. Well, maybe not luckily. I think for my identity, I was surrounded by the part that embraced it. And so for me, I was able to at least not feel ashamed at home. Outside, I did, but in my home, I didn't, because I grew up with the side and was surrounded by people who embraced and supported my Jewish identity, and, ensured that I didn't have school on certain holidays, and supported my bat mitzvah, becoming a Jewish woman, all those things. So for me, that part of my identity, being a Jew, was nurtured within my home.
Yeah, I think for me, this is a complex question for me as well. And it's, when I think back on my upbringing and my, who influenced me so much, I think immediately of my grandmother. And, my Mexican grandmother, who taught me what love is, who taught me what being a good mother is, a parent, and a member of the community. And so I think for me, I can kind of think about where I am in the present with my own family and with my own children and my own husband, in creating this household and this home that speaks to our intersections of being Mexican and being Jewish, and having this Mexican Jewish home, and what that feels like, what it sounds like, what it tastes like, right? And where we can explore our diversities and all of that. My husband is not Jewish, so, and even in that, we have another aspect of diversity in our home. But the home is a Jewish home, culturally and in some ways spiritually. I don't know so much spiritual, but mainly culturally, and I think just recently of our holidays. So what makes the way we celebrate holidays unique as being in a Latinx Jutina home, or a Jewish home? So we'll have empanadas alongside latkes and salsa, and this is what we eat, and this is natural for us, and this is what alongside our tamales, and so this is all part of. It's a fusion of our cultural embracing. Recently, even in I mentioned that I'm part of Jutine Co's board, and several of us shared how we celebrate Dia de los Muertos and honoring our ancestors, but honoring it in a way that also respects our traditions as Jews, right? And so being mindful of both our cultural and religious traditions to be able to give honor and respect to our ancestors in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Oftentimes in my work with families, particularly white families, they often share how difficult it is to address someone in their family around issues of race. So they'll just ignore them and just, oh, that's just however Papa is, or that's just how Auntie June is, or and for me it became so important to do something to say, because as we can tell from one generation to the next, we continue to travel with these isms, right? Anti-Semitism didn't just start in 2023. Who knew, right? It's been here for generation after generation. It's the same with racism. So I say, if we continue this practice from one generation to the next, that means families are passing down these practices, right? And so I feel like in that family space, and I love what you share, Ramona, the family you have now and the ways that you're creating for your family is the way you want it to be. This fusion of both cultures. And I just think that's so beautiful. But I think we come to that place through a sense of consciousness, right? That we have to say, like, hey, I had this experience, but I can be more intentional about how I want my children to see the world. So with that, I want to know, how has community outside of your family either embraced you or helped you to better understand yourselves? How has community or the larger society affirmed you and some of the messages you may have learned or things you thought about yourself? Or where have you found possibly some conflicts?
Could you say the question again, Ramona? That was a meaty one.
A meaty one, yeah. That's right. How has community how has community been a place that has either affirmed you and helped you to find your place and help you to better understand who you are? Or where have you met the outside world with some conflict? So has there been, or is there spaces where you feel like you, or communities you felt you have been able to go into and be fully embraced and learn more about who you are and seeing yourself? Or has it been outside, still perhaps trying to find that community fit or find that place of belonging, because there are so many messages that say, I don't fit, I don't belong, I shouldn't be here?
Yeah, I could jump in and go first. I've experienced both, right? On all different, and both of my communities, and all the different ways that I have community. There's times that you are not so welcome, and there's times where you have a beautiful embrace and welcoming. And I can give some, examples of that where, in the Latino community, I have, several friends and family, and, we're just being aware of, Jewish holidays or Jewish things, in my life, or not, just not ignoring who I am, or not, as a Jewish individual, I have certain dietary needs and that aren't necessarily typical for other communities. And so not being made to feel that the request to not have pork, for example, at a family potluck is out of line. It's viewed as, okay, this is a way that Ramona will be able to participate and feel comfortable, and that type of embrace. And and likewise in the Jewish community, just feeling that there's times that I feel that I can walk into spaces and be my full self. And there are times where there still needs to be some growth, where I have to code switch, or I have to be something else other than my full self. But, recently there have been wonderful, especially in the Jews of color space, national spaces, local spaces, where it's such a relief to be able to walk into those spaces and be 100% just be yourself. And everyone just gets you, that, when I first walked into those, it was a magical moment. And we all felt that way, so yeah.
Thank you for sharing. You have any thoughts on that, Chelsea, about community for you?
Yeah, I definitely 100% echo Ramona's sentiments. I've experienced loving reception and ostracization in both communities with both my identities. And that's what makes it so hard, being a dual minority. And then add on top of that, we're a woman. And like Ramona said, I think the most affirming space for me that I've ever felt was surrounded by a bunch of Jewish women of color in DC right before the Women's March, actually, because they put us at the front. And I remember walking into the synagogue in DC, this very old, was it a synagogue or a church? I can't remember now. But there were a bunch of, rabbis and cantors, and they were all women and Jewish and singing. And I was crying because I thought, wow, this is who gets it. This is it. And, of course, it's not like there were millions of us. It's a couple hundred. But that was like, wow, can I bring you all with me anytime I go out to eat or go shopping or make friends? Can I bring you around the world with me?
Right. Isn't that so important, though, when you have those affirming moments? And it does. I definitely had those too, like, oh man, I want to just bottle this up. I had this time once. I went to a conference this was right before the pandemic. It was a Christian church conference. We were worshiping at the 16th Street Baptist Church. And the first thing that we did was we sang the Black National Anthem.
Oh.
Yes. And I used them on just tears falling, and then we all, like, for the last line, we all put up the black fist, and I'm just like, oh, because it was
powerful.
Yes. So I know I can feel what you mean, just having that experience with those female cantors there. And it's spiritual too. It's just hitting you on all your whole person, and that is part of my work too, is this whole person, heart, mind, soul, strength. Can I be all of who I am? How do I engage all aspects of myself in making change? And with that, unfortunately, it's been a rise in white nationalism. It's been a rise in hate crimes against Jews. And it's whenever I hear of something like that and partner that with shootings against, again, Black folks in church, or Black folks at the grocery store, this type of radicalized behavior, it gives me the opposite. I think it's definitely not affirming. So I want to know a couple things as we begin to wrap up our conversation. How do you take care of yourselves when you hear of such tragedy? One, against people that's part of your faith community, but then particularly, especially for you then, Chelsea, when it's a attack, you get the attack against people for just being Black. Then you get attacked people just because they're Jewish, How do you two take care of yourself, and what can you offer to other people of color, which has been something I've really been trying to do more in my work with the racial trauma and recognizing how much that impacts us so much, to try to really take care of ourselves. So how do you two take care of yourselves?
Well, you are 100%. Like, seeing children locked in cages at the border affects me at a personal level. Seeing synagogues targeted with violence and terror affects me at a personal level. Seeing Black and brown men shot or targeted by police violence affects me at a personal level. And sometimes it's so engulfing that you just feel hope. You can feel hopeless and almost like you're drowning. And I'm still trying to figure out the self-care. I'll be honest. I think I'm doing a little bit better. I have to shut out some of the, the news, some of, and open up spaces that are healing for me, or messages that are affirming for me, rather than constant bombardment of the negativity that's there. I also try to incorporate Mexican, Indigenous, as well as Jewish ritual and teachings and learning to be able to survive and to overcome that. Not only me personally, but us as a community together collectively. We just keep going forward.
Yeah, you have that the and the politics of it all, right? It just can make it even more just such an inhumane experience. Chelsea, what about you? How are you managing? How do you take care of yourself?
Just like Ramona said in the beginning, as a double, triple minority, I feel so much more empathy for other marginalized communities. I feel so horrible when I think of the fact that, there are Sikh people also being persecuted, or during the pandemic that they were targeting Asians. Didn't matter even where in Asia they came from. And it just makes me want to fight for the underdog that much more, which means it makes me want to, and it's not even like I feel like we are the underdog. It's just the fact that America was founded by a bunch of, European looking people. And this was a country, though, that was founded on religious freedom. And I always go back to that we are the country that's supposed to be the tile work, that's supposed to be the representation of how other countries should look and how other countries should open their arms to you're tired, you're poor. But we've leaned into this individualistic mindset now that I really try to stay away from. I try to think of myself as part of a collective unit. The work I do on my boards, the work I did in my classrooms, the work I do when I ask one person or two people to vote for someone who I think can make a progressive change. I try to lean into the fact that as much hate as it feels like there is, it's little compared to as much love as I've witnessed in my lifetime. And I just try to think, this too shall pass. I think overall, because of the amount of people who want to learn and who want to know more, we, believe it or not, violence across the board in terms of history of mankind has gone down. You can't just get away with murder now. You are going to be charged with something. And that's where I think, we might not feel as violent. We can see it, but I do think these violent incidents that feel very consuming and leave you hopeless, I think this too shall pass.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good mantra. But when you said that about the individual, having such an individualistic society, right? We always think in that ways. I heard a really great seminar on about grind culture, and just the grind culture being such a product of capitalism. And it was a Christian conference, and the lady talked about Jesus demonstrating communal rest. And And when you said that, you try to think of yourself as the collective, it totally made me think about, well, what does communal rest then looks like to you? How would you map that out, or what would that be like, a communal rest? And I'm just putting that out there. You can answer it, but I know we have to wrap up shortly, but I would definitely like to engage that conversation more too, because I think for all of us, people of color, particularly when, like I said, when politics get involved, and now you're on the political radar, as you were talking about, Ramona, seeing the kids at the border and those camps, if you will, or hearing the president at the time say certain things that he was saying, which what that means and what that is doing to that particular community, or just even recently now, how the governor had sent a group of detainees, people to Kamala Harris' house in DC. You start making people be pawns in these games again, which I said is inhumane. So what does that communal rest look like for all of us? I just think that would be, that's so countercultural. Just as much as trying to say, hey, families, let's talk about hard topics and try to change them. So as we wrap up and think about what we learn from our families, what we get from our communities, how we take care of ourselves, and what communal rest could look like, I love to keep dreaming and thinking about that. I want to wrap up with you both sharing, what does a good ally look like? What does that mean for you both in today's time? What does it mean for someone to be a good ally? I like ally, but I like accomplice better. I like those people who are willing. When I think about accomplices, those are people who are willing to put something on the line to make sure justice happens. But I definitely know in this space, and feel like in this space, I hope you welcome me as an ally, because I think that's what space I'm in, because I'm still learning yet and still what that even means to be the best ally that I can for Jews of color. So I would like for you all to share a little bit more, like, what does that look like? What does that mean for you? And what are you hoping? Where are you hoping we go? Not Ramona, but Chelsea, you were so positive. This too shall pass. You just went to the grand scheme of the whole world. Well, it is getting better. Like, well, yeah, I guess it is. That was a great reframe, So I want to start with you, because you have such a positive outlook there. What is it to be a good ally in 2023? And what's your hope for us as we move forward?
Like I said earlier, when I was talking about just positivity, because it's very easy to get down in the muck and be very negative and think about how unfair life can be and all those things. So you do have to find meaning. And I think I really value people who are always open-minded and willing to learn. To me, that's what a good ally looks like. I don't care if this person walks up to me spewing the most racist, hateful comment I've ever heard. If that person is willing to pause for a moment and hear me out, I am willing to work with that type of person. I'm willing to go down a path of learning with that person. That's what a good ally to me looks like.
Thank you. Ramona?
Yeah, I love what both of you are all saying. I think for me too, that being allyship means really going beyond lip service. And it's long term. It's a long term relationship building. It's long term with the goal of being together in community. What does that look like? What does that feel like? How do we connect with one another? Not just, it goes beyond just standing up for each other. It means that when something happens, you feel it at a personal level, right? That you're invested, that you are part, that you have given a part of yourself. And but it's a constant journey, and it's a personal journey of growth, of connectivity, of knowledge, and of awareness and self-awareness, and correction and recorrection, right? Even for ourselves.
Yeah, thank you both so much. I'm looking forward to more conversations, and I'm hoping that this is just the beginning of our relationship together. That we will get together and brainstorm and create that communal rest collectively, because I think the more that we talk and we share the weight that we've all been carrying and say like, hey, I can feel comfortable enough to put this down because I'm with you. I think that just brings up a whole nother way of just being, which is
and share the victories.
Yes. And that's just so important, because I think it gives us that ability, Chelsea, to then say this too will pass. You know, when we can celebrate together and get into the space of our victories. For me, I consider this a victory. Because a year ago, I wasn't having this conversation. I didn't know the two of you, and I didn't know how big of a Jewish community of color existed. And so for me, I'm being stretched and my eyes are being opened, and I feel like I'm getting new friends. So I'm a people person. So I like my friends always like, you don't have no, them people ain't your friends, you just met them. I'm like, okay, whatever. But I'm hoping that you ladies feel the same way about me, that you can consider me as someone that you want to invite over to the next gathering, and we can
Shabbat. You're coming to Shabbat.
Okay.
Rhonda.
All right.
That would be the communal rests. Yes.
There you go.
Oh, I think like, okay, we didn't get into a whole lot of theological things, or either specific cultural things, but yes, like, okay, we can do that, because I think that's what I think culture and like getting deeper into like different religious communities after being in interfaith, you see, we already do have those kinds of things and invitations to rest as community. We already have that stuff, but we're just not leaning into it because we're so in the grind culture. But anyways, I invite you all to check out Something to Say. It is coming up shortly as January 14th through the 16th. I'm celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. King. We're doing that by inviting families to sit and have these conversations together, unpack racism, unpack anti-Semitism, really take out the time to have that conversation with your child or with your grandchild or niece to auntie, nephew, to uncle. Just having that cross-generational conversation, which to Chelsea's point shows us that although we've been having these problems one generation after the next, some change has been happening. And I think we can see that when we come together and we talk. So check us out, raceandfaith.org. You can get information on our website, Something to Say, to purchase a ticket and join us. Again, thank you, Ramona. Thank you, Chelsea. I appreciate your time. Have a very good night.
Muchísimas gracias, Wanda. Thank you.
Welcome.